Marcus Williams had $3.47 in his pocket and 24 hours before doctors would stop his daughter's cancer treatment forever. Then a gunman burst into the hospital, pointing his weapon at the one person fighting to save Emma's life. Marcus didn't think twice before stepping into the bullet's path. Before watching full story, comment below from where you watching. Also like and subscribe for more stories. Marcus Williams had $3.47 in his pocket and 24 hours before doctors would stop his daughter's cancer treatment forever. Then a gunman burst into the hospital, pointing his weapon at the one person fighting to save Emma's life. Marcus didn't think twice before stepping into the bullet's path. But let me start from the beginning, because this story isn't just about one moment of courage. It's about a father's love, a system that fails families, and how sometimes the darkest nights lead to the most beautiful dawns. 6 months earlier, Marcus had been a different man. He worked construction, owned a small house, and believed that hard work could solve any problem. His 7-year-old daughter Emma was the light of his world, the reason he got up every morning since his wife Sarah died in a car accident 3 years ago. Emma had always been small for her age, but that autumn she started getting sick more often. First it was just tiredness, then bruising that wouldn't heal, then nosebleeds that scared them both. Marcus took her to the pediatrician, expecting to hear about vitamins or diet changes. Instead, Dr. Jennifer Walsh looked at Emma's blood work and immediately sent them to Children's Hospital. The word leukemia hit Marcus like a physical blow. His strong, beautiful daughter had cancer. The next months became a blur of medical appointments, chemotherapy sessions, and bills that grew like cancer themselves. Marcus's construction job provided basic insurance, but the deductibles and co-pays were crushing. Within 2 months he had maxed out his credit cards and borrowed against his 401k. "Daddy, why do I have to take the medicine that makes me sick?" Emma asked one evening after a particularly brutal chemo session. Her golden hair was falling out in clumps, and dark circles shadowed her once bright eyes. "Because it's fighting the bad cells in your body, princess," Marcus explained, holding her as she threw up into a basin. "The medicine is like tiny soldiers making you strong again." But the medicine cost $8,000 per treatment, and Emma needed it twice a week. Marcus sold his truck and started taking the bus to work. He sold his tools and borrowed replacements. He even pawned Sarah's wedding ring, though that nearly broke his heart. Dr. Rachel Chin, Emma's oncologist, became their lifeline. She was young, dedicated, and she genuinely cared about Emma's recovery. She fought with insurance companies, applied for every grant program available, and even paid for some medications out of her own pocket when she thought Marcus wasn't looking. "The treatment is working," Dr. Chin told Marcus after Emma's 3-month scan. "Her white cell count is improving faster than we hoped. If we can continue this protocol for another 6 months, I'm confident we can get her into full remission." But Marcus knew they didn't have 6 months of money left. He was working 3 part-time jobs now: construction during the day, stocking shelves at night, and cleaning offices on weekends. He was averaging 3 hours of sleep, living on coffee and determination. The breaking point came on a cold Tuesday in February. Marcus was at the hospital for Emma's regular treatment when the billing coordinator pulled him aside. "Mr. Williams, I'm sorry, but your account is seriously past due. The administration is requiring immediate payment of $63,000 before we can continue treatment." Marcus stared at the number on the paper. $63,000. He made $15 an hour when he was working. Even if he never spent another penny on food or rent, it would take him 2 years to earn that much. "What happens if I can't pay?" he asked, though he already knew the answer. "We'll have to discharge Emma and refer her to the county facility." The county facility was where people went to die, not to get better. Marcus had heard other parents whispering about it in the waiting rooms. Understaffed, underfunded, more like a hospice than a treatment center. That night, Marcus sat in their small apartment looking at Emma sleeping on the couch. She had lost so much weight that she looked fragile as a bird. Her breathing was shallow and she made soft whimpering sounds in her sleep. On the table in front of him were eviction notices, utility shut-off warnings, and medical bills that seemed to multiply every day. His wallet contained exactly $3.47, the last of his money after buying Emma's pain medication. Marcus pulled out his phone and started making calls. He called every charity, every foundation, every program Dr. Chen had mentioned. Most didn't answer. Those that did explained they had waiting lists months long, or requirements he didn't meet. At 2 a.m., desperate and exhausted, Marcus found himself researching something he never thought he would consider: medical bankruptcy. But even that wouldn't help Emma immediately. She needed treatment now, not in 6 months after legal proceedings. The next morning, Marcus carried Emma into the hospital, knowing it might be her last treatment. She was so weak she could barely walk, and her lips had a bluish tint that terrified him. "Daddy, I don't feel good," Emma whispered as they sat in the waiting room. "I know, Princess. The doctors are going to take good care of you." But Marcus knew the truth. This was the last day. Tomorrow the hospital would stop treating his daughter, and he would have to watch her die because he couldn't afford to save her. Dr. Chin approached them with the same clipboard she carried every day, but her face looked different. Sadder. More resigned. "Marcus, we need to talk." They went through the familiar routine. Emma was settled in a corner with her coloring books while Marcus followed Dr. Chin to a quiet hallway. "The administration gave me the final word this morning," Dr. Chin said quietly. "If there's no payment by tomorrow, Emma will be discharged." "I'm so sorry, Marcus. I fought as hard as I could." Marcus nodded, his throat too tight to speak. This woman had become like family to them, and he could see how much this was hurting her too. "There is one possibility," Dr. Chin continued hesitantly. "There's an experimental treatment program at the university. They're looking for pediatric patients for a new therapy protocol." "What kind of experimental?" "It's promising but unproven. There could be side effects we don't fully understand. The survival rate in early trials is about 60%. Marcus looked back at Emma, who was drawing a picture of a butterfly with broken crayons. "What's her survival rate without any treatment?" Dr. Chin shook her head. "I can't give false hope." Before Marcus could respond, chaos erupted in the emergency department. The sound of shouting echoed through the corridors, followed by something crashing to the floor. "Everyone down. Get down now," a man's voice roared with desperate rage. Through the glass doors separating them from the emergency department, Marcus could see hospital staff diving behind desks and running for exits. A figure in dark clothing was moving erratically, waving something metallic in his hand. "We need to get Emma to safety," Dr. Chin said, her medical training overriding her fear. But when they turned toward the corner where Emma had been coloring, she was gone. Her book lay abandoned on the floor, crayons scattered everywhere. "Emma?" Marcus shouted, panic flooding his system. "Daddy?" came a small, terrified voice. Emma had wandered toward the vending machines near the emergency department, drawn by their colorful lights. She stood frozen in the corridor, halfway between safety and danger, clutching her favorite stuffed rabbit. The emergency department doors exploded open. A man stumbled out, his face contorted with grief and fury that Marcus recognized immediately. This was the face of a parent who had lost everything. In the man's trembling hand was a pistol, its barrel catching the harsh fluorescent light. "Stay back!" The gunman screamed at the security guards approaching cautiously. "I just wanted to see my son. They wouldn't let me see my boy." Marcus could hear the raw anguish in the stranger's voice. This wasn't a criminal or a madman. This was a father whose world had been destroyed just like his own was being destroyed. Dr. Chin began moving slowly toward Emma, her hands raised in a peaceful gesture. "Sir, please calm down. Whatever happened, we can work through this. We want to help you." "Help?" The gunman laughed bitterly, swinging the weapon toward her voice. "You people don't help anyone. You count money while children die. My Tommy died because we couldn't afford his treatment." The words hit Marcus like a sledgehammer. This man's child had died from the same disease that was killing Emma. The same impossible financial burden that was crushing Marcus had already destroyed the stranger's family completely. "You doctors promise miracles, then you let kids die when the money runs out," the gunman continued, his voice breaking with unspeakable grief. "My Tommy was only 5 years old." 5. Marcus could see Dr. Chin frozen in the hallway just 15 feet from Emma. The gun was pointed directly at the woman who had fought harder than anyone to save his daughter's life. The woman who had used her own money for Emma's medications. The woman who stayed late every night searching for programs and grants that might help them. Time seemed to slow down to individual heartbeats. Marcus thought of Sarah, his wife who had died too young, leaving him to raise Emma alone. He thought of all the nights he had felt helpless, watching his daughter grow sicker while he scrambled desperately for money that never seemed to be enough. He thought of Emma's drawings of butterflies, and Sarah's promise that their daughter would grow up to be beautiful and free. He thought of the experimental treatment program that might save Emma's life, and the 60% chance that had seemed so terrifying just moments ago but now sounded like hope itself. But right now, in this moment, he could do something that mattered more than money or medicine or statistics. He could save the life of the woman who had been trying to save his daughter. Marcus launched himself forward just as the gunman's finger contracted on the trigger. The bullet was meant for Dr. Chen's heart, but it tore through Marcus's chest instead. The impact spun him around and slammed him to the floor, his vision exploding into brilliant white stars. "Daddy!" Emma's scream cut through the chaos as security guards tackled the gunman to the ground. Dr. Chin was beside Marcus in seconds, her hands applying desperate pressure to the wound as blood spread across his shirt like spilled paint. "Get me a gurney. Call her immediately. We need blood, we need." "Emma," Marcus whispered, pink foam bubbling at his lips. "Please, take care of my Emma." "You're going to take care of her yourself," Dr. Chin said fiercely, but Marcus could see the fear in her eyes as his blood seeped between her fingers. "The experimental treatment?" Marcus gasped. "Promise me, if something happens to me, you'll get her in the program." "Marcus, don't talk like that. You're going to be fine. We're going to fix this." As they rushed him toward surgery, Marcus caught one last glimpse of Emma being held by a nurse. His daughter's face was streaked with tears, but she was alive. Safe. Dr. Chin was alive. Whatever happened now, that had to be enough. The surgery lasted 11 hours. Marcus flatlined twice on the operating table, and both times Dr. Chin found herself in the hospital chapel, praying to whatever forces might be listening. She had treated thousands of patients over her career, but Marcus's sacrifice had shaken her to her very core. When Marcus finally opened his eyes, it was to find Emma sleeping in the chair beside his hospital bed, her small hand wrapped around his larger one. Afternoon sunlight streamed through the windows, and Dr. Chin was checking his monitors with exhausted eyes that suggested she hadn't left the hospital since the shooting. "How long?" Marcus croaked, his throat raw from the breathing tube. 5 days, Dr. Chin replied softly. "You lost almost 60% of your blood volume, the bullet collapsed your left lung and nicked your spleen, but you're going to make a complete recovery." Marcus tried to sit up, but pain shot through his chest like lightning. "Emma's treatment? The money? I know we can't." "Marcus, stop," Dr. Chin interrupted gently. "There are some things I need to tell you. Things that change everything." She pulled a chair close to his bed, and Marcus could see something different in her expression. Something that looked almost like wonder. "After you went into surgery, several people came to see me. The first was Mr. Harrison, the hospital director. I thought he wanted to discuss security protocols or liability issues." Dr. Chin paused, seeming to collect her thoughts. "Instead, he told me something extraordinary. Marcus, did you know that your wife Sarah had worked here at Children's Hospital before Emma was born?" "Of course. She was a pediatric oncology nurse. That's actually how we met. I was here visiting my nephew who had appendicitis. What you don't know is what happened after Sarah's accident. She had a substantial life insurance policy through the hospital system. But when she died, there was a complication with the payout." Marcus frowned, his mind still fuzzy from the pain medication. "I never received any life insurance money. That's because the insurance company refused to pay. They claimed that Sarah had failed to properly update her beneficiary information when she went on maternity leave with Emma. They said there was a technicality that invalidated the policy." Dr. Chin pulled out a thick manila folder from beside her chair. "The hospital has been fighting this decision in court for 3 years, Marcus. The legal battle was complex, expensive, and there was no guarantee of success. But the case was finally resolved." She opened the folder, revealing legal documents with official seals and signatures. 4 days ago. The same day you took that bullet. The appellate court ruled that the insurance company's denial was completely invalid. The policy is legitimate, and the money belongs to you and Emma." Marcus stared at her, unable to process what he was hearing. "How much?" $470,000. The words seemed to echo in the quiet room. 4 months, Marcus had been drowning in debt, watching his daughter slip away because he couldn't afford to save her. The number was incomprehensible. "But that's not all," Dr. Chin continued, her voice trembling slightly. "When Mr. Harrison heard about what you did, about how you saved my life without a moment's hesitation, he convened an emergency meeting of the hospital board." She leaned forward, her eyes bright with something Marcus had never seen there before, pure joy. "The hospital is writing off every penny of Emma's medical debt. All of it. Past, present, and future treatment until she's completely cured. And they're not just getting her into the experimental program, they're making her the first patient in a new protocol that combines the experimental treatment with the most advanced therapies available." Tears were streaming down Marcus's face now. He had been prepared to watch his daughter die because he was $3 short of being able to save her. "Now, this can't be real," he whispered. "Things like this don't happen to people like us." "There's more," Dr. Chin said, pulling out another document. The construction company that laid you off heard about what happened. They want to offer you a project management position with a 60% salary increase, full medical benefits for both you and Emma, and flexible scheduling so you can be here for her treatments. Marcus was sobbing openly now, overwhelmed by the sudden reversal of everything he had believed about their situation. What? Why is all this happening? Dr. Chen wiped away her own tears. Maybe because sometimes the universe rewards people who choose to protect others, even when they have nothing left to give. You didn't hesitate for a second to risk your life for mine. She reached into the folder one more time and pulled out a final set of papers. There's something else, Marcus. Something Mr. Harrison specifically asked me to share with you. She took a deep breath before continuing. The man who shot you, his name is David Porter. His 5-year-old son Tommy was treated here for acute lymphoblastic leukemia, the same type Emma has. David's family couldn't afford to continue treatment after their insurance reached its lifetime maximum, and Tommy died 7 weeks ago. The information hit Marcus like another bullet to the chest. The man who had nearly killed him was just another desperate father who had watched his child die because of money. David wasn't evil, Marcus. He was broken. Completely destroyed by a system that failed his family the same way it was failing yours. But your sacrifice that night did more than save my life. You showed everyone, the administration, the board, the entire staff, what happens when good people are pushed beyond their limits. Dr. Chen's voice grew stronger, more determined. The hospital board voted unanimously to establish the Sarah Williams Foundation for families who can't afford pediatric cancer treatment. Your wife's name will help other parents so they never have to face what you went through, or what David Porter experienced. Marcus closed his eyes, feeling Sarah's presence in the room with them. His beautiful, compassionate wife who had dedicated her short life to helping sick children would continue that mission even in death. How much has been pledged to the foundation? Marcus asked quietly. So far? Over $2 million. And that's just from hospital staff and board members. When this story goes public, I think we'll be able to help hundreds of families. The room was quiet for a long moment as Marcus tried to absorb everything that had happened. 5 days ago, he had been a desperate man facing the impossible choice between his daughter's life and financial ruin. Tonight, he was still a single father with a sick child, but everything else in their world had been transformed. Emma stirred in her chair, waking slowly from her nap. When she saw her father's open eyes, her face lit up with a smile that reminded Marcus so much of Sarah it took his breath away. Daddy, you're awake. Emma climbed carefully onto the hospital bed, mindful of his bandages and tubes. I'm awake, princess. And I have some wonderful news to share with you. Over the next hour, Marcus explained everything to Emma in terms a 7-year-old could understand. Mommy had left them money to help with her medicine. The hospital was going to make sure she got completely better without Daddy having to worry about paying for it. They were going to help other sick kids too using Mommy's name. So I'm really going to get all better? Emma asked, her eyes wide with hope she hadn't allowed herself to feel in months. Yes, sweetheart. The doctors are going to make you completely healthy again. Emma threw her thin arms around Marcus's neck, careful not to hurt his bandages. I knew you would figure out how to save me, Daddy. You're the strongest daddy in the whole world. Marcus held his daughter close, breathing in the scent of her strawberry shampoo and feeling her heartbeat strong and steady against his chest. For the first time since her diagnosis, he allowed himself to believe that she was truly going to survive this. The weeks that followed passed in a blur of healing and hope. Marcus's gunshot wound healed without complications, and Emma responded even better than expected to the new experimental treatment protocol. Her hair began growing back thicker than before and the color returned to her cheeks. Local news stations picked up their story, calling Marcus a hero and highlighting the establishment of the Sarah Williams Foundation. Donations poured in from across the country, strangers moved by the story of a father's sacrifice and a hospital's commitment to change. Marcus returned to work 6 weeks after the shooting, accepting the management position that came with excellent benefits and the flexibility to be present for Emma's treatments. They moved from their cramped apartment into a comfortable house with a yard where Emma could play once she was strong enough. 3 months after the shooting, Emma's scans showed complete remission. The aggressive combination therapy had eliminated every trace of cancer from her small body. Dr. Chin declared it one of the most successful treatment responses she had ever seen. 6 months later, Marcus stood in the hospital's main auditorium as the Sarah Williams Foundation held its first major fundraising event. Emma, her hair now long and golden again, stood beside him as they presented a check for $500,000 to help other families facing the same crisis they had survived. In the audience, Dr. Chin watched with pride as Marcus spoke about second chances, the power of sacrifice, and the importance of never giving up hope. Beside her sat David Porter, the man who had shot Marcus that terrible night. David had been sentenced to community service and mandatory counseling rather than prison time, thanks partly to testimony from Marcus himself about the impossible pressures facing parents of sick children. Now David worked full-time for the foundation, counseling other desperate parents and helping them find resources before grief could drive them to tragedy. "Thank you," David had whispered to Marcus at their first meeting, tears streaming down his face. "Thank you for showing me that there was another way. For helping me find my way back to being human again." Marcus had simply embraced the man who had nearly killed him, understanding that they were both fathers who had been pushed beyond any reasonable limit by circumstances no parent should ever face. After the fundraiser ended, Emma tugged on Marcus's sleeve as they walked toward their car. "Daddy, can we visit the butterfly garden tomorrow?" The hospital had installed a memorial butterfly garden in the children's wing, funded entirely by foundation donations. It had become Emma's favorite place during her follow-up visits, and several other young patients found peace and hope there as well. "Of course, Princess. We can stay as long as you want." As they drove home through the quiet city streets, Emma fell asleep in her car seat, clutching the small butterfly pendant that the foundation had given to all the children it helped. Marcus glanced at his daughter in the rearview mirror, then up at the stars beginning to appear in the darkening sky. Somewhere among those distant lights, he believed, Sarah was watching over them both, proud of the life he had rebuilt for their daughter and the legacy that would help other families for generations to come. 1 year after the shooting, Emma started 3rd grade at the elementary school near their house. She ran ahead to join her friends on the playground, her backpack bouncing as she laughed about something one of them had said. "Have a great day, Princess." Marcus called after her. "I will, Daddy. Don't forget to pick me up at 3. Watching her disappear into the school building, Marcus marveled at the complete transformation of their lives. Emma was not just surviving, she was thriving. Her latest medical tests showed no trace of cancer, and her doctors were confident she would live a completely normal, healthy life. The Sarah Williams Foundation had helped over 600 families avoid the financial crisis that had nearly destroyed theirs. David Porter, now the foundation's director of family counseling, worked with parents facing similar desperation, offering them support and resources before grief could drive them to desperate actions. Marcus had been promoted again at work and was now overseeing construction projects across 3 states. The increased income allowed them to travel, to save for Emma's college education, and even to take the Disney World vacation Emma had been dreaming about. But perhaps the most important change was the least visible one. Marcus no longer felt like he was fighting the world alone. The community that had formed around Emma's recovery, Dr. Chin and her family, David Porter, the nurses and staff who had become extended family, the other parents they had met through the foundation, had created a support network that felt unbreakable. That evening, as Marcus tucked Emma into bed in her cheerful pink bedroom, she looked up at him with the serious expression she sometimes wore when thinking about big things. "Daddy, do you think Mommy knows how good everything turned out?" Marcus smoothed her hair back from her forehead, the same gentle gesture he had made during those terrifying months when he wasn't sure she would survive. "I know she does, sweetheart. I think Mommy has been watching over us this whole time, making sure everything worked out exactly the way it was supposed to." "I think so too," Emma said drowsily. "Sometimes I dream about her and she tells me how proud she is of both of us." After Emma fell asleep, Marcus stood in her doorway for a long moment, watching his healthy daughter breathe easily in her sleep. The single father who had once felt powerless to protect his child had learned that sometimes the greatest strength comes not from what we can control, but from what we're willing to sacrifice for others. In stepping into that bullet's path, he had saved more than one life. He had saved his daughter's future, created a foundation that would help hundreds of other families, and discovered that sometimes the universe rewards those who choose love over fear, sacrifice over selfishness. Marcus walked to his own bedroom, where framed photographs of Sarah smiled down from the dresser. In the largest picture, Sarah was holding newborn Emma, both of them glowing with health and happiness. "Thank you," Marcus whispered to the photograph, "for the insurance policy that saved us. For Emma. For showing me that love never really dies, it just finds new ways to protect the people we care about." Outside, the city lights twinkled like earthbound stars, and somewhere in the distance, a church bell chimed 10 times. In her room, Emma slept peacefully, dreaming of butterflies and birthday parties and a future that stretched out before her bright and unlimited. The single dad who had taken a bullet to save a nurse had discovered something more valuable than money, more powerful than medicine, and more lasting than any material success. He had learned that when we choose to protect others, even when we have nothing left to give, the universe has a way of transforming our darkest moments into our most beautiful triumphs. And in the quiet of the night, with his daughter safe and healthy in the next room, Marcus Williams knew that they were exactly where they were meant to be. The man who had been willing to die for a stranger had found a life more rich and meaningful than he had ever imagined possible. The butterfly had finally emerged from its cocoon, and it was more beautiful than anyone could have dreamed.